Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We're really happy to provide this presentation for CA Human Services and everyone on the call. As Liz mentioned, I've been with Social Security for several years. I'm a public affairs specialist and I'm based in Richmond, Virginia. I cover Social Security's outreach and education initiatives in Southwest and Central Virginia. And I am based again in Richmond, Virginia. So if anyone is on the call that is outside of the Virginia area, know that this presentation is a Social Security presentation and it is a federal organization. So the information does apply. And as Liz mentioned also, please keep your questions at the end. I will include a very short disclaimer before we begin. Please keep in mind that participation in this presentation does not constitute an endorsement by the Social Security Administration or its employees of the organizations and information and products not provided by SSA. On that note, we'll go ahead and get started. Just a moment. All right, can everybody see the screen? If I guess, Liz, can you confirm that you're able to see it on your end?
I can see it, Jackie.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. When you think of Social Security, we really are with you through life's journey. And for more than 80 years, we've helped secure today and tomorrow by providing benefits and financial protection for millions of people throughout the country. We really touch the lives of every American, whether directly or indirectly. So as you consider the information you're about to receive, I really encourage you to think about the ways that Social Security has been linked to your lives and the lives of your loved ones. As many of you may already know, Social Security field offices are currently closed for in-person visits due to COVID-19. That said, we are open for business and we can provide you with assistance over our telephones or our online services. If you visit us at ssa.gov or socialsecurity.gov, as seen in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide, you will be able to find our field office locator, which is essentially ssa.gov/locator. And that will put you in touch with your local Social Security office based on the zip code that you enter. So as I mentioned, I'm in Virginia, based in Richmond, and in this area, we have 24 SSA offices throughout this part of Virginia. So depending on where you live, if you're, let's say, in Richmond or Chesterfield or another part of Virginia, you'll plug in your zip code and it'll put you in touch with your local office. We always encourage folks to first visit us online because there is a lot of information online. And if you're looking to complete an application, and our focus today will be disability, know that you can complete an adult disability application online. And we'll talk a little bit about the differences between the disability programs as it relates to both adults and children. So really, first visit us online when possible. Also, please safeguard your information. That red banner here on the screen that says, what should I do if I get a call claiming there's a problem with my Social Security number or account? You know, Social Security representatives do call members of the public when we have ongoing business with the individual or when we've notified them in writing prior to giving them a call. Social Security employees never threaten members of the public in exchange for money or other information. So really be careful whenever you get a call from someone saying that they're with Social Security. If you're ever in doubt, hang up and give us a call and we'll be able to assist you that way. When you think about Social Security, we really, again, are with you through life's journey. One of the first things a baby will receive in the hospital, in addition to their birth certificate, is their Social Security number. And as life moves forward and life events occur, whether it's retirement, disability, the loss of a loved one, getting a new job, we really are here to help individuals as they move through those life events. Now, our focus today is going to be disability. So I'm going to provide you with an overview of the Social Security Disability Program, along with the SSI program, which is Supplemental Security Income. And it's very important to understand that those two programs, Social Security Disability and Supplemental Security Income Disability, are very different, but the definition of disability is the same. So to meet the definition of disability, the individual must be unable to engage in substantial gainful activity because of a medically determined physical or mental impairment. So it has to last for at least 12 consecutive months, or it's so severe that it may result in death. So the definition for children under age 18 applying for the SSI program, which is a needs-based program, is slightly different, but a disabled child does also qualify for SSI employment supports, which we'll talk about as we move through. So focusing first on Social Security disability insurance, and we use a lot of acronyms at Social Security. So Social Security disability insurance is referred to as SSDI. So it's a program that provides income supplements to individuals who are not able to work or no longer able to work because of a significant disability. It is for people who can't perform substantial work activity because they have a medical condition that is so severe, it's going to last at least 1 year or longer or result in death. For a person to qualify for SSDI, they have to be under their full retirement age. And again, we use acronyms, so full retirement age, also referred to as FRA, and earning less than the substantial gainful activity amount. So just to kind of give you an idea, when we talk about substantial gainful activity, that is a set level. In 2020, that amount, SGA, is worth $1,260 of earnings for a non-blind individual. We do make a distinction for SGA on blind versus non-blind individuals. If a person was blind, their substantial gainful activity limit, or the maximum they could earn in a month, is $2,110. And again, keep in mind that SGA does change year to year. So those are the amounts for this year in 2020. And then as we go on, I mentioned if an individual's blind and at least 55 years of age for certain individuals. And they also have to have a certain amount of work credits. So when you think of Social Security, it's for an individual who has worked enough under Social Security and has those work credits. Whereas SSI is a bit different. SSI again stands for Supplemental Security Income, and Social Security administers the SSI program, which pays monthly benefits to adults with limited income and resources who are disabled, blind, or age 65 or older, okay? Blind or disabled children may also qualify. So people who have worked long enough, recently enough, may be able to receive Social Security, okay? And SSI benefits at the same time if the Social Security in combination with their other income falls below the SSI limits, income and resource limits. So SSI is looking at obviously the medical condition, but we're looking from a technical standpoint at their income and resources to see if they meet those technical requirements. This illustration shows the difference between the SSDI and the SSI program. Remember, Social Security comes from the Social Security Trust Funds. So that's your FICA, your Federal Insurance Contribution Act, the taxes that you pay, that is essentially your payroll tax that comes out of your pay when you're working. And as you're working and paying, building those work credits, you're building up your Social Security. SSI is not Social Security. It comes from the General Treasury Fund. And SSI payments are not based on a person's earnings. Remember, SSI is needs-based, whereas Social Security will pay benefits to a disabled individual who's unable to work regardless of other income and resources that they may have. So very important distinction. Now, a lot of folks want to understand, how does a person qualify for Social Security disability or SSI disability? And Social Security refers to a 5-step process. We look at whether the person is working, is their person's medical condition severe enough to meet the listing, and is the impairment meeting the medical listing? Can you do the work that you did before if this was an adult, let's say? And is there other types of work that you could do based on the activities happening in our modern economy? Now, for children, it's a bit different because obviously children may not have been able to work. If they're under the age of 18, oftentimes, they may not have had a part-time job. So we're looking more at function reports for children. IEPs are pretty big when we look at reports for children. Now, I mentioned substantial gainful activity, and this is really important because from a technical aspect, this is one of the first things that we will look at Social Security when we receive a disability application. Again, is the person working? And if so, are they performing at a substantial level? Okay. Again, in 2020, the impairment is anything other than blindness. Their earnings limit, the SGA limit in 2020 is $1,260 a month. So if they're over that, then that means that the person is engaging in substantial gainful activity. For blind individuals this year, again, that limit is $2,110. SSI only uses SGA as a measure of work in initial claims, whereas Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI, uses SGA throughout the life of a claim. So this is where reporting responsibilities come into play. It's very important if a person does return to work, if they got approved for disability, whether it's SSDI and or SSI, that they notify Social Security of that work. Now, the Blue Book is a very helpful resource book. It is an evaluation that we refer to, and it provides physicians and other health professionals with an understanding of our programs. It essentially explains how each program works and provides information to help those professionals make sound and prompt determinations. So it's specifically prepared to provide physicians and other health professionals with an understanding of our program. It lists the codes of impairments for both children and adults, which appears in the Code of Federal Regulations. If you visit our website, again, this is available. The Blue Book is available on our website, socialsecurity.gov/disability/professionals/Blue Book. And this, as Liz mentioned, this presentation will be made available after the session, so you don't have to write all of these links down. But just know that if you're curious about whether or not the medical condition that you or maybe your family member has, if this is in the Blue Book, you can visit the Blue Book, search for that particular category and see if that condition is listed. If it is listed, it will explain all of the different impairments, the severity levels, the limitations associated with the condition that Social Security will look at when they're making the disability decision. And this, again, is a medical reference known as the Blue Book. Now, we have different books. We have a Blue Book and a Red Book, and the Red Book is really your guide for work incentives. So one of our highest priorities at Social Security is to support the efforts of disabled beneficiaries who want to work, who are trying to work, and we develop policies and services to help them reach their goals, their employment goals. So the Red Book is a guide to work incentives. It's a reference tool. It is updated yearly with new information designed to provide a working knowledge of the working provisions. So it's geared to educators, advocates, family members, or rehabilitation professionals and counselors who help individuals with disabilities who are trying to help those individuals get back to work. Now let's talk a little bit about Social Security disability benefits for family, for the family. So when you think of Social Security, we're a large organization that has many different types of benefits, right? We manage SSI, but Social Security is not SSI. Social Security has many benefits, such as disability, spouse benefits. We assist individuals in enrolling in Medicare, which is administered by the Center for Medicare Services. We assist individuals with survivor applications. We pay survivor benefits under Social Security. So in addition to the person who may be disabled themselves, a spouse may qualify if the spouse is 62 or any age, if caring for a child under 16. Divorced spouses may also qualify, and children may also qualify for Social Security if the child is not married and under 18, or in high school but no older than 19. And then we have a category for disabled adult children who are proven disabled before their 22nd birthday. So it's important to know the different types of benefits available. This is going to be my plug for visiting creating a My Social Security account if you haven't done so already. If you're over the age of 18, you have a U.S. mailing address, and if you have worked and built up some work credits, that Social Security statement that we used to mail to all workers is available in the My Social Security account. If you visit ssa.gov and set up that account, That statement is a great planning guide because it lists the estimate of what your benefits will be for yourself if you're moving into retirement age, or if you became disabled. What would your disability benefit estimate be? If, you know, if something happened to you and you had survivors that qualified, what would your children or your eligible survivors qualify for? Those estimates are listed on that statement. So I really encourage you to visit that Social Security statement through your My Social Security account if you haven't done so already, since it'll give you those important numbers. Now, switching gears a little bit, we want to talk about the SSI program, Supplemental Security Income. Again, that is a needs-based program intended for individuals that have limited income and few resources. If it's an older person, maybe they're not necessarily disabled, but they're aged, and that's the category we called individuals that are 65 or older who have limited income and resources. They may qualify for SSI. Or someone that's totally or partially blind, or a person that's an adult that's disabled with a medical condition that keeps them from working. So remember, the rules are a little bit different for children because when a child is under the age of 18, they are categorized as a child. So with SSI looking at income and resources, for any child under 18, we are counting the parents' income and resources in those child SSI applications. Now, to qualify for SSI, remember what we're looking at. Income, the money that you receive, such as wages, Social Security benefits, pensions. Income also includes such items such as food and shelter. Resources, so those are things that you own. If it's real estate, money in a bank account, if you have cash, stocks, and bonds. And SSI is also looking at where the person lives and if they are, what their household dynamic is. Do they live with one family member, or do they have 3 family members and maybe other children that may be getting SSI? So there's a lot that goes into getting SSI, and this is one reason why we ask a lot of questions when we accept that disability application. Do you want to file for SSI? If you are in a needs-based situation, most likely you would select yes, I would want to. But if you know that your resources are over $2,000, for example, and that's the limit for an individual that is filing for SSI, if they have resources of over $2,000, they most likely would be technically ineligible because they have too much resources. Now, when we talk about SSI requirements for children, remember that a child under the age of 18, it is for a child that has a physical or mental impairment or a combination of both that results in the marked or limited limitations in functioning. Okay, so again, we're looking at function reports for children. The child must be either blind or disabled, and if the child is blind, they must meet the same definition of blind as it applies for adults. So blindness, again, has a little bit of a different rule there, so keep that in mind. Also, the condition must be expected to last at least 12 months or longer or result in death. You know, Social Security's disability definition is very strict. It's not a partial disability program. We can't compare it to any other agency disability definition. It is very specific, and this is why oftentimes, when a family member asks me, my child may have these conditions, I'm not sure if they're going to qualify, I'll always refer them to the Blue Book so that they can see, based on the condition that the individual has, whether or not they would qualify or not. Again, for children, when we reference a child for SSI purposes, remember it is a disabled individual who is not married nor head of a household, under age 18 or under age 22, and a student regularly attending school. I mentioned SSI income and resource requirements. There are some provisions for students. If a child is under age 22 in school, they actually have a higher income threshold that they have, again, because we are trying to help individuals get back to work. So if this applies, make sure that you check out the provisions for students if the student is receiving or wanting to file for SSI. Again, moving into more requirements for SSI with children, as it relates to children. Disabled children living in households with limited income and resources may qualify. Remember, if the child is under 18, we are counting the household income. So if the parents live in the house and let's say the parents each are working, we are looking at their income, but we're also looking at the number of people in the household, if anyone else receives benefits. For eligibility, the income and assets of the disabled child and parents are assessed. But once that child turns 18, things are a bit different. And this is why oftentimes a child may not qualify under age 18 if the parents are working, if they have other income and resources. But at 18, we evaluate the child now as an adult, even if that same child continues to remain in the same household as a parent. So this is why parents oftentimes will help their now adult child who's 18 file for SSI at that time, because the decision may be different, because they may meet the medical requirement, but just before didn't meet the technical income and resource requirement. So very important to know that at 18, the child then is technically considered an adult. Now, deeming, this goes back to what I was saying of how we count the parent's income. So the process of deeming basically determines how much of the parent's income and resources Social Security will count. So it applies when the parent has income and resources that we must consider. Again, the child is under 18, lives at home with his or her natural or adopted parents, or they live away at school but come home on some weekends or holidays or school vacations. So keep that in mind if it's a student. I mentioned, and we bring this up because when a child turns 18, this is really important. We actually make a new disability determination using the adult rules. I referenced the Blue Book and how the listing of impairments are categorized by adult versus child. From a technical aspect, we're also categorizing the requirements for SSI in a different category. We make a new determination using the adult rules. We no longer count the income and resources of parents for eligibility when the child is now 18. So if the child continues to live with the parents but does not pay for food or shelter, keep in mind that if they did qualify, it would be a lower SSI payment, because we do look at contribution if they're paying for food and shelter. How is food served? Or is the family eating out? Are they providing groceries? Are they using those funds towards household food sharing and that sort of thing? And an SSI application can be made as early as the day of the individual's 18th birthday. So we cannot make an adult decision for a 18-year-old prior to their 18th birthday. So keep that in mind. If you have a child or you're helping someone that is needing that adult decision, we have to make sure that they're at 18 at the time that the application is submitted. Now, how do you actually file for benefits? Now, for anyone that receives SSI or has received SSI in the past, you may remember that in the past, it was not an option to file a claim online for SSI, but that has changed over time. So you can begin the process and complete a large part of the application online. So keep in mind, there are requirements to be able to complete the SSI application online. The individual has to be between 18 and 65. They can never have been married. They must be a US citizen. They cannot have applied or received SSI benefits in the past. So even if they had applied for SSI in the past and maybe were denied, they won't be able to complete a new SSI claim online because they've applied in the past. And they are also applying for the Social Security disability benefits at the same time of SSI. So very important. Now, in the event that you want to file for benefits and you're unable to do it online, you can call Social Security to make an appointment, and that request for an appointment can be made via phone at our toll-free number or at the local SSA office phone number. Again, those numbers are available through the field office locator link, which is on our website, socialsecurity.gov. What happens next? So let's say you filed an application for SSI disability and maybe also Social Security disability. So Social Security will review the information to ensure that all the technical aspects are met. And if we're able to move the claim forward for a medical decision, the application will be sent to the State Disability Determination Services. We refer to it as the DDS. And the DDS will then contact the medical providers to get those medical records. In the application, we ask individuals, please list all of the names of the doctors, the facilities. If it's a child, let's say, we ask for IEP information, function reports, doctor's visits, pediatricians that the child has seen. So it's very important. I can't stress it enough to include as much information as possible. If you give us all the information that we need. The DDS will review those medical records. We actually ask for those records. You do not have to provide the records yourself. DDS will request that information, and they may ask for additional information about how your condition affects your daily activities. So once the DDS has the application that you've submitted to Social Security, the DDS may reach out and say, we just need a little bit more, but we were asking for it directly. So keep that in mind. This is why it's so important to notify Social Security if you have a change in address, if you've moved or changed your mailing address or your physical residential address, or your phone number. You know, the last thing we want is for us to have to deny your claim because of a technicality. We would want to make sure that we have alternate contacts if the person's transient, so that we can reach out and find the individual so that we can get the information needed and make that decision. Now, for individuals applying for benefits for SSI in particular under the age of 18, I mentioned scheduling an appointment with Social Security by calling our toll-free number. It also mentions contacting your local office, but the link at the bottom is the link to the child disability report. And when you go there, you'll see all of the questions, the medical questions that we're asking that can be completed online. So that by completing that in advance, it will save you a lot of time during the actual appointment. The appointment will cover a lot of technical questions, some medical questions, but that child disability report really covers the medical questions. Moving forward, I mentioned the State Disability Determination Services Office. You know, they're the agency, the state agency that completes the initial disability determination for Social Security. So the DDS includes doctors and disability specialists in our state here in Virginia, for example, and the DDS, you know, works with these doctors to review the facts of your case. They're looking at the listings, the medical impairments, all of the documentation available in those medical records and or the function reports, again, if it's a child. They use this evidence from your doctors, hospitals, clinics, and institutions where you've been treated. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that when we send the decision to the individual about their application, if they've submitted disability SSDI and or SSI, that you need to know the difference between a technical decision and a medical decision. And it's very important. Again, remember we talked about work. If it's an adult, they have to have enough work to qualify. And if it's medical, do they meet that impairment listing? So in Virginia, for example, an initial claim timeline would take anywhere from 3 to 5 months to get an initial claim completed with processing and a decision notice. I always say, again, please make sure if you're submitting an application that it's a full application, because if we have everything we need initially with fewer contacts needed, we're able to make that decision quicker. But if we're unable to gather records or we can't locate the individual, if we need more information, that is when the timeline will start ticking and it may take a little bit longer. So once we get to the point of making that decision, when the state agency, when the DDS makes their medical decision on the case, Social Security will then send you that decision notice. And if approved, the notice will show the amount that your benefit will be, when the payments will start, your reporting responsibilities, and so on. If the decision is not approved, if the claim request is not approved, the letter will explain why and tell you how to appeal that decision if you don't agree with it. So it's important to note, if it's not approved, the individual does have 60 days to submit an appeal. And again, very important that we have the individual's correct mailing address, that you're reading your notices, so that if it is not approved and you want to appeal, that you can do so timely. Now, when it comes to Medicare and Medicaid, keep in mind that with health insurance, Medicare is associated with individuals that are getting SSDI or Social Security disability. Medicare is our federal health insurance program, and oftentimes people will think that Medicare is for folks over age 65 or older, but it is also for individuals that receive SSDI. So someone would have to be entitled to Social Security disability for 2 years before Medicare kicks in, and on the 25th month, their Medicare Parts A, which is hospital insurance, and the Part B, your medical insurance, also known as doctor's insurance, the Part B, A and B would kick in on the 25th month after being entitled to SSDI. Keep in mind that if the person has worked enough under the Social Security program and they qualify, They would have to pay a base rate for the Medicare Part B, and the base or the standard rate this year in 2020, let me make sure, it's $144.60, and that's the standard rate. So keep that in mind. If they have the Part B, that amount will simply come out of their SSDI payment. Medicaid, on the other hand, is a state health program for individuals with low income and limited resource. So Medicaid is associated with the SSI program. So in most states, children who receive SSI will qualify for Medicaid. Now the second bullet, it says in many states, Medicaid comes automatically with SSI eligibility. That is not the case in Virginia, even though we know if a person qualifies for SSI, they will get the Medicaid, but there's another step where the individual simply has to go to their Medicaid office and request that application, proving that they have the SSI, and then complete the application with Medicaid in Virginia, and they'll then get the coverage. Whoops, sorry about that. You need to tell Social Security if you have any outstanding warrants or any issues with the law, if you're convicted of a crime, if you violate a condition of parole or probation. We do have specific rules as it relates to SSDI and SSI. If someone was receiving SSI benefits, if they were convicted of a crime or institutionalized, we would suspend an individual's SSI payments, and eventually their payment would be terminated after so long. With Social Security disability, the individual would remain in suspense until we receive notice that the individual has been released from that facility. So very important. In some cases, if this applies, the person may not need to file a brand new application depending on the timeline. So it's important to know if, how to move forward if that applies. Now, going back to working while receiving benefits, remember earlier on I mentioned working incentives, and that is so that a person, if they are trying to go back to work, we will help them test their ability to work and share what those rules are. We do have a Working While Disabled publication that is available on our website, and I encourage you to visit that if you're looking to go back to work, or someone that gets disability benefits that wants to try to work. And the Red Book also is a really great resource for advocates, family members who are trying to make sure that they can maintain those benefits and still stay within the realm of the rules for working. Now, in terms of employment supports, SSDI and SSI, we do look at the subsidies and special conditions. In some cases, a person may get extra help if they're trying to work. So we have to take those things into consideration, right? If someone's working in retail, let's say they're working, for example, with a group like Goodwill Industries, and they're maybe working in retail. The question we would look at is, does that person get any special help? Are they able maybe to take more breaks than someone compared to another retail position? Have they tried to work but haven't been successful? Do they have expenses related to their medical condition, right? And are they on a plan to achieve self-support, a PASS? The Ticket to Work is another program that we encourage individuals to look into. It's a vocational program, and it allows individuals to test their ability to work. We would not complete a medical review if a person has activated their ticket, and that's very helpful to know as well. The last bullet, expedited reinstatement. If you know anybody that maybe was receiving benefits, they were working, maybe they were testing their ability to work, and for a period they weren't successful, but then they became successful in their work attempts. If they worked and earned over the SGA limits after they've completed their trial work period, extended period of eligibility, and now they're in their regular period of disability, if they've worked over that SGA limit, their benefits may be terminated. And they have within 5 years to request a reinstatement if the condition gets worse, if it worsens after that working period. So there are some provisions that we offer in those scenarios. Now, I mentioned subsidies and special conditions. These are just the definitions to help explain, what a subsidy is. A subsidy is a support provided by your employer that may result in you receiving more pay than the actual value of your support. So it's essentially special help, extra help. And a special condition refers to on-the-job assistance, right? I mentioned that earlier. For example, a vocational rehabilitation agency, because of the support they receive, they may receive more pay than the actual value of the services. So if that applies, it's very important that we know that so that we can annotate the application. I mentioned unsuccessful work attempts. You know, the benefit of Social Security is that we know that people may be trying to work, but they may not be successful. So we're not going to penalize a person if they're trying to work. We know that an unsuccessful work attempt is an effort to do work in employment or self-employment, which you stop to reduce to below SGA after a short time within 6 months. So that's basically saying within 6 months, your impairment, removal of special conditions related to your impairment that you needed to help you work. Very important. Now, impairment work related work expenses, we can deduct those expenses off of your earnings. So this example explains that if the beneficiary is earning $1,200 per month in gross wages and his copay for medications is $75, then we will deduct the $75 in those medications and only count the difference in that income. So that person may be below SGA if they have those expenses that we can deduct. Very important. This slide shows an example of some impairment work-related expenses, transportation costs, attendant care services, and so on, prescription drugs, other items and services. Very important. You know, if this applies, we need to know about it so that we can deduct them from the earnings. I mentioned the plan to achieve self-support. It is an SSI provision intended to help individuals with disabilities return to work. So again, these provisions are available on our website. There's a lot of information. The PASS can help pay for school or training expenses such as tuition, fees, books, supplies, and more. If uniforms or special clothing is involved, safety equipment or tools. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunity there to help try to set the person up for success. The ticket to work. For more information, I encourage individuals to contact the ticket to work. If you go to socialsecurity.gov/work, it explains that the ticket is available in all 50 states, including 10 U.S. territories, and many Social Security disability insurance and SSI beneficiaries are eligible to obtain these services from the state's vocational rehab location. So very important to know about these resources. For more information on Ticket to Work, an individual can contact the Ticket to Work number, which is 866-YOUR-TICKET, or also visit the website. Now, switching gears a little bit, the ABLE, Achieving a Better Life Experience Act, is very helpful for parents who are trying to save money for their children who may be eligible for SSI. SSI, basically, with SSI, the eligibility for the SSI program is based on income and resources, and we know that. But for an individual, when we look at resources, the limit for SSI is $2,000 a month, and for a couple, it is $3,000. But if a beneficiary's ABLE account exceeds $100,000 limit, the cash benefit will be suspended until the account is below the limit. So with ABLE, a family is able to save for their child and not necessarily be disqualified from SSI. And some of the expenses include that you can use in the ABLE account include housing, education, healthcare, transportation, job training, personal support services, assistive technology, and more. Now, currently 40 states and Washington, D.C. have established the ABLE programs and know that beneficiaries can enroll in ABLE in their state or in another state that accepts out-of-state residents. So, you know, we don't manage ABLE. These are handled by the states, but if you're interested in looking to save money for your child or family member through the ABLE so that they are not just, no longer ineligible for SSI, that may be helpful. Now, switching gears a little bit, we're going to talk about representative payee, and it's very important to know that oftentimes people that receive, oh, wonderful, there's training for ABLE this week. That's great. Switching gears into the representative payee, you know, if you have a family member or you're helping someone who receives Social Security or SSI disability, that individual may need help managing their benefits. And so Social Security's representative payee program appoints a relative, a friend, or another interested party, let's say if there isn't a family member or friend, to serve as a payee. So this individual or organization will manage their benefits to ensure that those benefits are used properly for food, shelter, clothing needs. Social Security really looks closely at those applying to be payee because we need to protect the interests of the beneficiaries. So it's very important. If you're a payee for an individual, we do have a representative payee portal available at the My Social Security account, which lets individuals, individual payees conduct their own business or manage direct deposit, wage reporting, and more. Now, something new that's really helpful for folks this year, actually was introduced in March of this year. We implemented a new option to help protect financial future. So the advanced designation of representative payee allows a person to designate in advance up to 3 individuals who could serve as a representative payee for a person if the need arises. So this is not an appointment of a rep payee, nor is it a power of attorney. So keep in mind, participation is voluntary, and you can update or withdraw the information at any time. So if you choose to participate, we'll send the individual a notice each year listing who the advanced designee is listed, so that you're aware and can be reminded if you need to change it. And we only contact advanced designees if we need to determine that you need a payee to help you manage your benefits. So it's just helpful to have these individuals listed if down the road you may need that representative. I mentioned the My Social Security account, very helpful tool for an individual over age 18 that has a US mailing address, a social security number. Creating a My Social Security account is safe and secure. I do encourage folks to add the extra security, which essentially is you getting a code in real time where you plug in that code and then allows us to validate your identity, and then you can access the system. And the My Social Security account houses your Social Security statement, which I mentioned earlier, shows all of the years that you worked, the amount of taxes that you paid, and it gives you an estimate of what your benefits will be down the road. Again, whether it's for retirement or disability, or if you passed away and had eligible survivors. So it's a very helpful tool. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and just touch upon scam awareness, because unfortunately we are in an age where there's a lot of scammers out there and people trying to defraud individuals. So you really need to be careful and protect your information. Our Office of Inspector General continues to receive reports from across the country about fraudulent phone calls from people claiming to be from the Social Security Administration. And Social Security, again, will never threaten members of the public. That's not how we conduct business. So understand what the threats are, be cautious, and make sure to secure your information. Now, remember, I mentioned earlier, we do sometimes contact individuals, generally those who have ongoing business with Social Security, whether by telephone or customer service purposes. So we will typically send the individual a letter so they know in advance. When we do make that call, remember, we will never threaten you for information, will not state that you face potential arrest. You can oftentimes tell that some of these calls are pre-recorded calls. So if ever in doubt, remember, don't give out any information and hang up. I encourage everyone on the call today to follow Social Security. Visit us on our website, ssa.gov or socialsecurity.gov. Follow us on our Facebook. We have a LinkedIn. We have a YouTube channel that has a lot of great videos. And then there you can see also there's an Instagram and a Twitter account that we have as well. And that is it for me. Liz, I would open this up for questions if you have any questions on your end.
Yeah, Jackie, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask directly.
I have a question. It's related to, well, first of all, can you hear me?
Hi, Beth. Is it Beth?
Yes,
I can hear you.
yes.
Hi,
I'm
Beth.
sorry. Wasn't sure how this was working. So I have a question regarding when the child is applying, so I guess child into adult is applying for disability at 18. So they were determined to be disabled as a child. When it came to 18, there seems to be a situation in which they get kind of hung up in the SGA portion. So, and what is the time frame for showing that they're unable to meet that SGA? So how long do they have to attempt to work before reapplying again?
So that's a good question, Beth. So just for clarification, the child has the child, I say child, the 18-year-old individual, have they worked at all prior to 18?
No.
Okay. And so what we would do when the application is submitted, the individual, the 18-year-old would list the fact that they have not worked. And I would say that function reports, IEPs, will be very, very critical. Now, I think what you're alluding to is, because they haven't worked, is the DDS going to want to give it some time to see if they're going to work? Is the individual in a transitional stage, or are they? Do their records show that they don't have any ability to work? Are they kind of trying to do some vocational work, or are they not at that point yet?
Well, we are kind of at that point, and interesting enough, it's really happening. I'm a case manager and I work for a community service board, so I work with children who both have an ID diagnosis and a DD diagnosis. And what I've been seeing is that for those people with autism, they're really getting hung up in this transition from children to adulthood, whereas before they were receiving SSI. But then when they've got switched over, then when they went to apply for adulthood, it seems like their disability isn't really, it's not defining enough. So, but then the letters talk about showing this gainful employment. There is no documentation that you have not been able to be gainfully employed. So honestly, I'm not sure what the denial is for. Is it for their disability, or is it for the SGA? So I'm just trying to kind of figure out which direction. Now, back to what you were talking about in terms of vocational. My kids are kind of in that transition period. They are working with the Department of Rehab or Aging and Rehabilitative Services, but have not secured that job. So like I said, we're just kind of in a weird position. And as a community service board, we didn't initially, years ago, we didn't oversee this developmental disability group. So we weren't seeing it very much, or really at all. And then all at once I have these influx of clients who have that diagnosis, but then we've changed into adulthood, and now we're scrambling to figure out how to keep some of their services attached to them because they've lost their disability, meaning that title of having a disability. Does any of that make sense to you? And
yeah.
Go ahead.
I think I do understand. So a couple of things, and let me just clarify. So when we look at an application, if it's a SGA denial, meaning the person's work and earnings are over the limit and they're performing SGA and they may not have any subsidies or subsidies on successful work attempts, and they're simply just earning too much to qualify, that is a technical decision. And if that were to apply, the letter would explain that no medical decision was made. Now, what I think you're referencing is a medical decision that applies to, I guess, the 18-year-old. And if it's a medical decision, it would have language that says something like, the individual has the ability to perform these types of jobs in this economy per this, regulation kind of thing. So the question is, if you're trying to make the case that the child, or the 18-year-old adult child, I should say, is not able to work, that documentation needs to be very thorough. And really the medical listing has that impairment, as I mentioned, that's listed in the Blue Book, has to be really very, very much part of that listing, because the DDS oftentimes will see, looking at age, education, we're looking at if there was work in the past, are there other types of jobs in the modern economy if they can't do what they used to do. Now, obviously with the child, they haven't worked. If you have this particular case, if they haven't worked, there's nothing to compare that to. So in some decisions, they may want to give it time to say, well, based on what we see in the medical evidence, the function reports, the IEPs, these may be other jobs that they could do. So if you're making the case that they're unable to do that, that needs to be really, really clear in the medical and in the IEP documentation. What I would suggest, and I didn't really go into this from a post-entitlement standpoint, but in some cases, a child may be getting benefits and we do a medical redetermination at 18, because again, we did talk a little bit about the change from child to adult, and the rules are different for adults. You would have to prove the case that the now adult child meets the adult listing. So that's again where you would go back to the Blue Book, compare what the child qualified for under the child listings, and see if the child now meets those adult listings, because they are different.
That's very helpful. Let me go back to one other thing, that SGA. So if they haven't had the work experience, is there a set amount of time that Social Security would like to see if they are able to be gainfully employed, and then we can go back to reapply, or is that somewhat subjective?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head. I may have to refer to a DDS colleague to see if there's, you know, Liz, if you don't mind, will you make note of that question so I can follow up with you and try to get a response on that?
Sure.
Because sometimes, you know, I mentioned 3 to 5 months is the time it takes to make a decision. Sometimes they may hold the case a little bit longer if they need more evidence or they need to develop the work aspect, Beth.
Yes.
But I don't know off the top of my head how long specifically, and it may be case by case depending on the medical condition, but I'm happy to look into that for you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now this is very helpful. The Blue Book referencing, that will help me a lot. So, you know, to be able to kind of see what we're looking at. So excellent. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. And remember, Beth, right now, I will say, as I mentioned earlier, remember our field offices, you know, even though they're closed for in-person visits, we are open for business over the telephone. So if you need to get in touch with your local office, whether it's a payee question, a representative payee application, a disability application that you want to make an appointment for, you can call the local office to request an appointment. Now, I don't know what our appointment calendars look like right now, but if you can't, for some reason, complete it online, you can make the appointment, so we'll get you on the calendar, and then one of our representatives will call on the scheduled date to complete the appointment. I will mention we do have adult disability checklist, which is really helpful because it'll help you prepare for the appointment. It'll give you an idea of all the questions that will be asked. It's kind of like fill in the blank. So you have a reference before the appointment, and you'll know what to expect.
Jackie, we have another question in the chat. So one of our participants is the payee for their 25-year-old son. When they started receiving the SSI payment for the money they gave SSA existing account they had with their son, they're trying to open a separate account to receive that money. The bank said they needed to bring the original letter stating that they are the payee. Do they need to go to the SSI office to request that letter?
The payee should be able to contact their local Social Security office if they're still currently the payee. Now, I'm curious, has the payee will need to update that information with Social Security once the bank has changed. So that's very important, especially with those monthly payments being deposited early in the month. So when the change occurs, you know, you may not want to close that old bank account until, you know, the next month's check is received in the new account. But they can contact their local office and get actually benefit verification if needed. If they're unable to access it themselves, they can request that, and it'll be a verification, you know, that the money is received to that representative payee. So yes, that is possible. You can just contact your local office.
All right, and we have another question. Where can they find the adult disability checklist?
Okay, great question. So I'm going to pull this up. Give me just a moment here. Okay. So I would refer to the Disability Starter Kit. So if you go to ssa.gov and you can type in Disability Starter Kit, Disability Starter Kit. It has a lot of links, fact sheet, what you should know before applying for benefits, disability benefits. It provides a link to the online application, and then there's a checklist. It's an Adobe PDF file. You click on the checklist and it lists basically, you know, all the items that we're looking at, and as you go through the list. Now, some of these may not apply. Remember, as I said earlier on, for example, you know, if you have medical records, you're not required to include those in the application. It does say, please bring whatever medical records you have to the interview. That's not the case, obviously not right now with our offices being closed. And we certainly wouldn't want you to bring a huge stack of medical records if you have them. So referencing the medical records is very helpful. But the disability adult checklist tells you what we need. If there's workers' compensation involved, most likely in your situation, not the case. But we need names and dates of birth of your minor children, your spouse, marriage, divorce information, medical release, and so on. But that is available at our website, ssa.gov, and you would simply type in disability starter kits. I think someone typed it in. Is that right? Can you see that, Liz? So somebody
Yes.
type in.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm toggling between my screen and then my work desktop. I'm on a different device right now. So thank you for whomever shared that link.
All right. We have another question about, do you have any updates on the retirement age? They've been receiving mixed answers.
So for retirement purposes, that's a little bit of a different topic. For any individual born between 1943 and 1954, for individuals born in that time frame, your full retirement age is 66. Okay. For any individual born after 54 but before 1960, your full retirement age is going to be 66 in some months. I encourage you to visit the retirement calculator, which is on our website as well. Anybody born in 1960 or later, you have a full retirement age of 67. And many of you may recall when Social Security full retirement age was 65 back in the day, and that's no longer the case. So full retirement age, again, is based on when you were born. And, you know, individuals filing for full retirement benefits this year, you know, that's for individuals that are 66 this year. But again, it could be anywhere from 66 to 67, depending on when you were born. Early retirement age, the earliest someone could retire for Social Security purposes is age 62. And that's early. And keep in mind, if you're thinking of retirement, 62 is early, but you have to be 62 every day of the month if you're considering an age 62 retirement. So it may not be the month you turn 62. For example, if I turn 62 today, August 18th, the first full month I'm actually eligible is going to be September, because next month is the first month I would be 62 every day of the month. So retirement has a bit of a different rules and different you know, requirements. So if you're on the retirement track, I really encourage you, again, going to the My Social Security account, checking out all of our calculators. I think we have over 11 retirement planning calculators that apply not only to the individual wanting to retire, but if you have eligible dependents such as a spouse, you know, if it's a survivor situation, we can, you know, run some numbers based on your situation using those calculators. Did that answer your question on the retirement?
Yes, it looks like it.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
It did. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Is that Isabel? Thank you, Isabel.
Yes, it is. Thank you. I got a long way to go.
Me too.
Well, not too long, 8 years, but that's long enough. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do we have any other questions, Liz?
Not currently. Does anyone else have anything?
I think someone asked for the My Social Security link. I'm going to pull that up real quick and see if I can get that to you real quick. Give me just a moment. So you basically go for the My Social Security account. It's www.ssa.gov/my-account. Or you can simply go to our website and you'll see an area at the bottom left-hand corner of the home page. But it is ssa.gov/my-account. And that is where you would create an account. Now, keep in mind, it's very important, you cannot create an account for anyone else. It has to be for yourself. You can't, you know, even if you're trying to, you can help someone do it themselves, but you can't do it for someone else. So our system is very secure. There's a lot of identifying questions. We validate the information, the answers to the questions based on what's in the system already. So if the question is answered incorrectly too many times, you won't be able to access the system. You may get locked out, and you can try again after 24 hours. And I think there was a question about setting up one for a child. You cannot set up a My Social Security account for a child. And Liz, I do see several chats, but I can't tell if there's additional questions in the chat feature.
So for any, are you getting any privately? I'm just wondering, I'm getting, my son receives.
Oh, thank you. I see Heather, link for setting up My Social Security account. Yes, Heather, you cannot set up a My Social Security account for a child. And then there was a question, I think, from Mimiko.
Yes.
My son, it was sent to everyone. My son is receiving SSI for disability. His disability income receive SSDI as well. He works part-time. I'm Payee. Okay. So there are, Miko, there are instances where an individual may qualify for both Social Security and SSI if the Social Security amount is low enough. SSI benefits are set at a specific amount, whereas Social Security are based on the person's work contributions and their earnings. So a couple things, if your son is working, it's important that he does report that information to Social Security so we can ensure he's within those earnings, you know, the rules that we discussed earlier on the SGA and so on. But as he's working and paying those FICA taxes, he is building his Social Security. So if he were to become insured for Social Security, yes, it's possible. Now, anybody that's getting SSDI and SSI, in those cases with the disability, it's simply a $20 increase to the benefit amount. So if he qualified for more on the Social Security side than he would SSI, we would stop the SSI and pay him under Social Security because we'd want to pay him the maximum that he qualifies for. So what I suggest, you know, is again, if he's over 18, he can register for his My Social Security account and he can see his earning statement. But I think you said, oh yes, I'm Payee. If you're his Payee, then you should be able to contact your local Social Security office and see if he's eligible for Social Security. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any more questions?
And remember the online resources with disability. You know, I can't emphasize enough the importance of referring to the Blue Book, you know, and knowing, you know, how specific Social Security's definition of disability is. Again, it is intended for individuals that are 100% disabled, unable to work and perform SGA for at least 12 consecutive months or longer. So if the person is in that category, they're unable to work at that level, you know, you certainly want to look into this. If they're able to work, if they maybe have some medical conditions, you know, and they may not meet the requirements. So just looking at that Blue Book and those resources, as I mentioned earlier, will be very helpful.
Tammy, yes, we will. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jackie.
Sorry, Liz. It's all you. We saw it at the same time.
Yes, Tammy, we will be sending out the presentation. Jackie has shared it with us. If you give us a little bit of time, we'll get that out to everyone.
And Liz, when we wrap up here, I just wanted to get on the call with you real quick. Have a couple questions once everyone logs off. But again, thank you everyone for joining. I hope you found this session helpful and informative. You know, at Social Security, we really want individuals to know about our programs, and we appreciate the work that you're doing with your families and those, if it's not a family member with a disability community. What you do is so very important, and we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you, everyone.